Welcome to Mr. R's art class. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thumbs, subs, and ring that bell. Okay, so in this video I'm going to show you how to take the reference, take the resource of your 2D sphere and actually turn it into something that is a 3D model. So all the skills that you've learned, all the techniques that you learned of how to use a value on a piece of paper or inside of Microsoft Word, I'm going to show you how to take those same techniques and apply that to a 3D model inside of Paint 3D. So this is, creating the illusion of something that's 3D on a flat surface, but now we're going to go ahead and use those same techniques, those same skills, and bring it into Paint 3D and create a 3D object, right? So we're going to make this a lot more realistic and apply it to a 3D model inside of Paint 3D. So here are some of the controls here for you as well, depending on if you're using a mouse, if you're using your fingers to pan around, that pen tool, and then that keyboard tool here. So keyboard, mouse, if you're using your fingers on your screen, or the pen tool. Okay, so I want to go ahead and access my sphere that I have as a resource inside of my computer. So you should already have that image downloaded on your computer. If you don't, you can go ahead and go into the Microsoft Teams and download it from there. And so this is just where I have it downloaded on my computer. So again, wherever you have your resource of your sphere, you want to go ahead and download that. Otherwise, download it from Microsoft Teams. And there it is there. So there's a couple ways you could bring this into Paint 3D. So you could go ahead and right click on this and copy. And then go ahead and open up Paint 3D. So on the bottom left hand corner, type here to search. You want to type in Paint 3D. Otherwise, you already have it there. And so you could use both your trackpad, you could use a mouse, you could use your stylus for this project. So you're going to go ahead and click on New. And because I right-clicked and copied that image, that resource, I can just paste it here. And that'll resize the canvas. Okay, so what I want to do, the shape of this sphere is a sphere. So we want to go into 3D shapes up here on top. Go ahead and click on that, and then 3D objects over here on the right hand side. So you want to click on the sphere. So the way that you select a model, a 3D model, is you go ahead and click on it, and then you click on the canvas. So I'm going to try to center that as best as possible. And then you have these transform tools here. So you could click on those. And then you want to keep resizing by grabbing the corners there. And I'm just trying to cover up that model. And I'm going to click on 3D view so you can see that's kind of covering out that whole surface there, and clicking back. Alright, so now this is a blue sphere. I want to go ahead and make it white. So I'm going to go in 3D view here. I'm actually going to bring it out a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it and use this Z-axis tool to kind of get it away from that sticker. So I could actually use my eyedropper tool to kind of collect some of these colors here from the resource itself. So I want to make sure that I'm in 2D mode. So I'm going to click off of 3D, click on my object here, and then I can actually go back in 3D mode. Click on edit color up here, grab the eyedropper tool, and then select that sphere in the background. So I'm going to keep going back and forth between the 3D object and the 2D flat image resource. And so I'm going to go ahead and start using some of my brushes up here in the top left hand corner, and I'm going to go ahead and maybe widen this up a bit, and then you want to scroll down. It might be a little bit hidden here, so you want to hover over the right side and then scroll down, and I'm going to change the opacity to about 50%. So this is how strong the brush is, right? So if I chose 100%, then that brush would really show up really quick, really fast. So I actually just want it at 50% so that there is some transparency between the different layers of this sphere here. So you could kind of use this value scale down here at the bottom as a kind of like a cheat sheet. But again, you can also use the eyedropper here tool. And again, I want to be in front view though at the same time. So again, this already has a light source to it. So if I go up here to effects, you can kind of change where the light is hitting it, right? So if you look over here on the bottom right hand side, you have the sun over here. So the light source is coming from the top right. The light source is coming from the top right. And that's why you have the shadow on the opposite side of the sphere here. So this looks almost accurate, but the thing is about this program is that you can't actually play around with the light source a whole lot, right? So that's why this isn't as dark as that image there. Otherwise, if this was a really strong light, then the shadow on the opposite side of the sphere would be as dark as that resource there. So we're going to go ahead and kind of recreate that by using these brushes. So you could leave that light source there if you want to. Otherwise, you could always go back up to effects and change it to where it was so that you could actually see how bright that is there. You can also change the color of the light if you want to. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that. And then I'm going to grab these brushes here. And I'm going to go to the front view. So again, I haven't applied any brushes yet. But again, you can also use these values down here at the bottom as a cheat sheet. So you know you're going to have to start with this one down here. And then you're gradually going to have to get darker and darker and darker as you move towards the left. So I'm going to use the watercolor brush. You can also use the pencil or even the spray paint. But I saw that this watercolor brush kind of works really well. And so again, this is at, let's see, I want to widen this up a bit, maybe about 150. And again, you can't really tell, but it is applying a color to this sphere here. So once we get to some of these darker values, you'll be able to notice. So I'm going to grab this second one here. And then I'm clicking and I'm moving in a circular motion on this sphere here. So you can also rotate around this object. So I'm right clicking with my mouse to kind of rotate around it. I'm going to go back to the 2D mode and I'm going to grab that third value there. Still have my watercolor brush selected. Alright, so now it should start darkening up here. Alright, so now I'm going to grab a darker value. I'm on that fourth one. So you want to kind of keep track of where you're at on these values here. So you can kind of see if you kind of squint your eyes here. Let me see, zoom in. Well, you could actually see it when you're backing up as well. So you can see these darker values here, and then it actually gets a little bit lighter here. So this lighter part of the sphere is actually where I haven't applied the brush effect yet. Scroll down. So I believe I'm on this fifth one here. Alright, so there we go. Then it starts picking up pretty quick. So circular motion. So I know it's dark over here, and then I do have some reflected light down there at the bottom. And then you could always go back in case it got dark too quick, and then lighten that up. And then let's say you lighten it up too much, you could always go back with that darker brush. And you can actually layer this and work around the model too. Because what's going to happen is if I go into 3D view, I'm going to rotate around this object by right-clicking on my trackpad or your mouse. And then again, if you went behind the sphere, right, there's nothing there. So again, whatever values you have here on this side, you kind of want to bring it around and wrap it around the back side of this sphere. I'm right-clicking on the object. So the light source is in this area. But then again, you also have that reflected light down there at the bottom as well. You want to rotate around the object as much as possible. If that canvas is getting in the way, you could always go up to canvas and you can turn that canvas off while you rotate around the object. You want to click back on 3D view. And again, you could always bring back that canvas by coming back up to where it says show canvas. Clicking back on my brushes and then continuing there. if you kind of get lost of where you're at and where you're looking at the sphere, you can click back on 3D view, click back on a canvas, and then bring that canvas back. Right, so I'm going to take that off there. Go back in 3D view. If you're not in 3D view, you can't rotate around this object, so you want to make sure you're in 3D view. And then click back on brushes if you need to apply. So it seems like this value here is going to be doing a lot of the work. And I am going to get darker values down here on the bottom right. But now it's starting to look more like a sphere, right? So it's already a sphere, but the light source in this app doesn't really push these values a lot as they should be. Let's see, so I'm going to go back, bring back my canvas. Maybe darken that part up there. I'm going to bring back my canvas by clicking back on canvas, turning my canvas on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit closer here to this highlight, clicking back on brushes, clicking on this third one here. Again, you do have some opacity, so I'm going to get it a little bit closer to 100%. And then you can always undo if you didn't like what it did. I kind of want to get here. Maybe it's this fourth one that I'm really trying for. Let's see, I'm actually going to go in the opposite direction. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually push this a lot further. I'm going to select a darker value. And again, I want to go in 3D mode, rotate around this object here. Kind of get a good idea of where this darker value is. Go back in 2D mode. I could go back here to about 75% on my opacity. Choose a darker value if I need to. Using a circular motion to help blend some of those lines in. Then again, remember, you do have this reflected light that does stay down there. Alright, I'm going to go push this a little bit further. Alright, so you can actually see the contour, you can see the roundness of this sphere now really showing. I'm going to turn down the opacity here. So the opacity is how dark this brush is being used. So this should actually blend it in really well between those two values. Otherwise you can kind of see where these two are not blended. So again, I'm going back with a lighter opacity to blend that in. Doing this last one here. And I don't want to push it up too much because I don't want to get dark too quick. And coming back with my brush. And again, it gets dark really quick, really fast. So I'm going to turn down the opacity. And then blend those two values in. Otherwise, you could see a really dark line between those two values there. Right, you could probably even get this highlight a little bit closer to the top of the sphere if you want to. So I'm going to pick this one. Right, so I'm smoothing out those lines otherwise. Right, so now it's smooth. I'm actually trying to close up that highlight a lot more. Alright, so now it's starting to look more like a sphere, but again, you want to be able to wrap around this sphere and kind of apply some of these same values on the back side. So you click on 3D view, and again, so because I didn't apply anything on the back, it looks a lot lighter. You can see this line here because that's as far as my brush is reaching. So you could turn off your canvas and then click on 3D view, then wrap around the back and apply some of these same values on this back side here. So let's see, you could kind of grab some of these values that you already have on your sphere and then just bring it around the back. Alright, so if it's not working as fast, again my opacity was turned down so I could bring it up a lot faster. Remember, this is the highlight, so I'm kind of looking down on my sphere, rotating my sphere with the right mouse button. Let's see here. So again, you could just always use this eyedropper tool, select, let's go back there, use the eyedropper tool, select the color I want to use, and then bring it on over to the side I haven't applied it to yet. Eyedropper tool, select, then bring it over. So again, this is the reflected light, so be careful. So I'm going to click back off of 3D view. Alright, so now we're starting to get into that reflected light there. Alright, so you want to finish this off, the back side of this. So I'm going to grab some of these darker values to kind of speed it up a bit. But you also want to make the back side look like the front side too. Right, but in the opposite direction. So since this is the back side, the reflected light's coming up from over here in case it's looking a little bit weird. So you can kind of just think of this as a reversed sphere. So the darker values will be on the bottom right if we're looking at this from the back. Alright, so instead of changing the opacity, I'm just not passing over some of these areas as much, but I'm overlapping these areas down here a lot more. And that's how I'm creating value without changing the opacity. So again, one trick that I do is I squint my eyes, and that kind of helps you be able to see some of the value a lot quicker, a lot faster. Alright, so I'm going to rotate around here. So I do still have some lines between the front and the back. We can close that off. That's what this side looks like here. Use the eyedropper tool, select, eyedropper tool, eyedropper tool. Alright, let's go to the front view here. So there's my sphere. Rotate around this. This is the reflected light. That's what that is. Alright, so I'm going to turn back my canvas on. I'm going to turn my canvas back on. So there it is there. So I also have a table and a background. So we can add this table in and the shadow on that table there. So what we're going to do is, in order to create a table, we're going to go to 3D Shapes, and we're going to insert a cube. And so you want to make sure you have 3D Shapes selected, and you want to click on this cube here. So usually it's a plane, it's P-L-A-N-E is what we would use for a table normally, but we could just start with a cube, and then we're going to flatten that out. So we want to select cube, select your canvas, and since this is selected, we're going to go ahead and change the color of that right now. So we're going to come up here to where it says Edit Color, use the eyedropper tool, and then select this white in the background. It does look like it's a little bit darker here in the front, but that's just because that does have some shadow to it. So I'm going to stretch this cube out as much as possible. not as much as possible, but a little bit past that piece of paper. Then I'm going to come up here to 3D view, and I'm going to flatten this cube out because I want to make it flat like a table. So I'm going to grab this middle transform tool. You don't want to grab a corner because that's just going to scale everything down. So I'm going to grab this, scale it down, and since this is a table, maybe it's about that wide. I'm going to go in my front view, and then I could probably even rotate this table a bit. But I think what's going to make this look more like the image is when we change the camera view of this. When we take a picture of this, we're going to take a snapshot of this. So we'll take a snapshot of this and it'll actually look like our reference or our resource here. So I just want to make sure that I'm not, the sphere is touching the table there. Probably center that, and I could still make this table a little bit smaller, right? It looks a little bit too wide, so I'm going to grab that middle transform tool, bring that up a bit. That'll be my table there. And it looks like this table is actually intersecting with the sphere, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I just want to make sure that the sphere is actually just sitting on it. Alright, I'm going to go and change this view here. I'm going to get rid of that canvas. And so in that reference, you can kind of see the back table here, but that's because the reference is kind of taken in side of a view that like this. Right, and so in order to pan, we want to hold down Alt, A-L-T, and then use the left mouse button. Right, so that image, that reference, that resource is taken in a view like this here, right? So at an angle, instead of straight up and down like this, that reference is kind of taken at a view from this angle here. And that's kind of why you see this back table up so much, right? Is because that reference is kind of taken from the angle like the way my sphere is right now. So let's go ahead and add a shadow. You can even add some texture to this table to make it look like the sphere is actually a lot more on it. So, but we need to add a shadow here. So you could bring this reference back up, go back to brushes. And again, I want to apply this to the table, not to the sphere. So this might be a little bit tricky. So that is I used the eyedropper tool, grabbed the color from the shadow from our reference. And I want to go around this sphere here in an oval shape. So let's see. Try it one more time. And it is showing up there. I might have to actually change the opacity. So again, if you don't have the scroll bar showing up, you want to just hover over here and it should show up for you. I'm going to bring this opacity up maybe to about 75%. There we go. Alright, so again, this is the shadow for the sphere. And then you do have some textures here on the sides. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and lighten up this opacity and give this table some texture. So again, you're just lightening up the brush. I'm not lightening up the color of this, of the shade that I have selected, or the color I have selected, or the value that I have selected. I'm just lining up that brush so it's not showing up as much. I'm just going to widen it up a bit. So I'm going to push it to 200. Now I'm just applying texture to that table there. So something similar to the way that this has texture. Alright. So you can do that to this whole table. You can even push the opacity a little bit more. So it looks like I'm concentrating too much on that area, so I could actually, or you could come back with the same watercolor tool and then maybe have a lighter value to lighten that up and then kind of start over in that area. Alright, so then you also have this back wall here as well. We get some lighter values here. So again, you can always use the reference as a resource. You'd always take colors from that reference there. Alright, so you can also add a back wall to this sphere as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Canvas. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the canvas. And I'm going to add a back wall to this. So I'm going to go ahead and go in Shapes one more time. Add a cube, clicking on the cube, clicking inside maybe the center there. So there's my cube, and I'm going to go ahead and expand this, maybe the same width as my table. I'm going to go in 3D view. I'm going to rotate around this by right-clicking with my mouse, zoom out, and then grabbing this middle transform tool. There's my wall. And I want to go ahead and let's go 3D view. I'm going to use this Z tool to push it back. And I could even probably make this a little bit wider. I could also bring it up a bit. Click back on canvas. Maybe bring that back up there. And I can use some of these values behind my sphere, right? So it's really dark. So this is kind of like a reversed value scale, or it's the value scale here for the back of the sphere. You're using, maybe this probably starts out with this value here or this value here, and then it gets lighter as you move towards the back. So you could even probably pick colors from your sphere. I'm going to go into brushes. I'm going to pick colors here from my sphere, and I'm just going to add those same colors to my background here. So I'm going to turn this down a bit, maybe to 170, turn this back down to an even number here, and then give this a background. Right, or you could always turn your canvas on and off. Grab a color, and then turn your canvas off there. Go back to brushes. So you can turn your canvas on and off. You could always go in 3D view to darken that up there. Again, in order to pan around, you want to hit Alt and then right click. Or if you want to move the whole canvas here without panning, right? So panning would be moving around an object, whereas you actually can hit the same button, Alt, and then left click, and you can move around here as well without changing the angle of your camera. So I'm going to go ahead and color select, and then fill this part in here behind the sphere on the wall part. Maybe change the opacity a little bit higher. Let's see what that canvas looks like here. Alright, so it does lighten it up. The darkest part of this background is on the right side of the sphere. Otherwise, everything else is pretty much the same light value. Go back up to brushes. I'm going to widen this brush up a bit. Again, you want to move in circles to kind of hide some of those lines. I'm going to hit Alt and the left mouse button. You can do this a lot better than the way I am. You can go a lot slower than the way I am here. So we got that background texture, and I'm just going to go to the front view and then darken this up a little bit more on the top right. I was going to use some of these colors here from my sphere. Alright, so this also helps bring that highlight up a lot more. You could always turn down you could always have the same color selected, but bring the opacity down to help blend in that last color you have. So same color, the opacity is just turned down. Let's see what that canvas looks like, or our reference. Alright, so maybe even the background could be turned on a little bit more, or we could kind of reverse that part there. So you could always hit undo, or just play around with the colors that you have. And that'll help smooth it out. Alright, so this is pretty much close to being done here. I'm going to change the angle. And then you can also darken that up, or fill that in. So again, you want to play with these different angles. Check everything at every different angle. I'm going to turn the opacity up. Right, because if you're just working in one angle the whole time, and then you change the angle, you're going to notice that maybe some spots you didn't get to. And then you can probably blend this shadow a little bit more once you get done with yours. Alright, so this is close to being done here. You just want to blend the shadow in a little bit more. Make sure that the back side of your sphere is colored in as well. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to go ahead and save this here. I'm going to go to Menu, Save As. I'm going to save this as a Paint 3D project. So if you save it as a Paint 3D project, you could always go back and take an image of it, do a quick little clip movie of it. So Sphere 3D, save in Paint. So if we have the 3D model saved inside of Paint, that Paint format, we can always go back and change the angle whenever we do a snapshot. So this is saved. I'm going to go back here to Menu, and then Save As. And now I'm going to save it as an image. And then I'm going to change that view to something that's close to our reference. So we could just angle and framing. And so that's what we're going to do here. So here are some of the controls here for you as well. Depending on if you're using a mouse, if you're using your fingers to pan around, that pen tool, and then that keyboard tool here. So keyboard, mouse, if you're using your fingers on your screen, or the pen tool. Alright, so I'm going to get rid of this here. So again, the way that image is taken, that reference, that 2D image is maybe an angle like that, because you're able to see the shadow and you're able to see the background there, and you're able to see the light source. So this is kind of the angle that image is drawn. So again, in order to pan, you want to hold down Alt. If you want to keep the angle, and I'm going to zoom in here. Because if you look at that reference, that table kind of takes up half of the sphere, kind of cuts through the half of the sphere there. So you can kind of see here some of the spots, but I might still need a touch up. I could always go back to cancel and blend in this background here so it's actually behind the sphere. Or maybe something like that. Alright, so there we go. Then you go ahead and hit OK. Once you got your angle all figured out, hit OK. You want to save it as a PNG. This is a format that you could just upload into Microsoft Teams, and then click on Save. And you want to save this in the same folder that you have your sphere saved into, your 2D sphere. So I'm going to go here to Documents. Again, wherever you have your sphere saved, that's where you want to go. I'm going to save this as Sphere 3D, and then click Save. Then we're going to see what that looks like. There it is there. And this is what you would upload into Microsoft Teams for the assignment, for the project there. Once you got it done, once you got it saved, you want to go ahead and upload this into Microsoft Teams. So if you have any questions of how to create a model, how to bring that into the canvas, how to actually bring the reference into Paint 3D, or how to play around with some of the brushes or rotate around your screen, go ahead and let me know. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And feel free to watch any of the other related videos.